Hi, I'm Michael Killen. A lot of us have some money. Some of us have a lot of money. And then there's those who have money and want to do something good with that money. The David and Lucile Packard Foundation is one of the most important and progressive foundations that probably has ever existed. I have as my guest Wilbur. He was the president of the Packard Foundation for 23 years. Right now he's a trustee and former president. I'm going to ask him a series of questions to help us understand how we can be effective with our money. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thanks very much, Michael. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, when you were president of the David and Lucile Packard Foundation, were you concerned with, or were you coming across people who had money and they wanted to do something effective with it, but they needed a framework, a methodology, some insights?
Very much. I mean, one of the things that we felt we ought to do at the Packard Foundation is work, and generally through the Council on Foundations in Washington, which has about 2,000 foundations, and really try and help to train new people coming into the field to really understand that they can make a tremendous difference in philanthropy, or that they can just sort of give the money away and not much change happens. So
you're implying that there is some kind of methodology, some kind of approach that enlightened, more progressive people can follow to invest their money?
Yeah, I think there is very much. I think what you need to really do, and if you want even a very modest amount of money, is figure out what is your mission? What is it that you want to try and do? And whether it's working with children, with a health issue, whether it's seniors, whether it's an environmental issue, whatever it is, try and figure out where can I make a difference. Then you want to look at what kind of goals. I mean, these are investments that you're making. They're investments for a social reason. They're a social profit. There's like any kind of investment for a financial profit. This is an investment for a change, for a social profit. So you want to really try and use the money, figure out what your goals are, and then design your strategy. What's the right kind of strategy to get from here to there? What do I want a particular area to look like 5 years from now, or a group of people, or what, where am I and where do I want to be in later?
So I guess every individual has a relative or some experience. Could have gone to Africa and they've seen, or India and seen the poverty and lack of education, or they've had a family member who's had Parkinson's or some other neurological degenerative disease, and that influences them, where they put.
Very much so. So many people focus their money, and a gentleman not too recently in Southern California died and left $1 billion that he'd invested, all for spinal disease, because he had had an accident and had a spinal break of some sort, and he wanted to really help the 250,000 people in the United States that have had spinal, and nobody else had done this before. So that was his mission, and then he tried to set up his goals and his strategy.
So first thing for a person to do is determine their mission, and their mission is sort of the pathway to some particular area where they want their money to do some good, and that could be education, healthcare, or something.
Most of us don't think about what our mission is. You know, a nice thing comes along in the mail or an email, and somebody wants you to give some money, and you think, well, that's a good thing, and so you give some money away. And there's nothing wrong with those grants. Those are good grants. But if you want to change and you want to make a difference, then you want to really focus in on a particular area and see and say, how can I make a change to make this better?
However, identifying, quantifying, defining a goal, isn't that difficult?
Well, it is sometimes all by yourself, so ask for some help. Who are the nonprofits that are working in this area? How can you, find out from them, what are their goals? Maybe their goals can become yours. It doesn't have to be something you just think about all yourself. You can come up with all kinds of ideas and goals that others have thought of already, but think about them, look at several. Don't just look at the first one that comes along and says, oh, that's a nice one, and then go ahead.
Okay, so people come to you, or they still come to the Packard Foundation, no doubt, asking for advice?
Well, they do, but I'm talking about people just in general, and that not necessarily where somebody would come to them asking for advice. Sometimes you have to go out for advice. And we felt at Packard that if we wanted to figure out what's happening in a low-income community, we couldn't just wait for people in that low-income community to come to us. We had to go out and spend some time there and talk to people on the street, talk to leaders over there, figure out what's happening.
So the Packard Foundation is still doing that. There's research groups that are doing surveys, talking to different folks. And
yes, all of our staff are doing that in the different areas, and our staff are divided up by topic and by program. And so if they're involved in environment, then they're keeping up with what's happening in the environment. If they're involved with local grant making, it's looking at the neighborhoods that are around. I mean, Palo Alto is a relatively wealthy community. Right next to us is East Palo Alto, which is not so wealthy. East San Jose is not so wealthy. Across the bay, we have others.
Okay. Well, all right. You brought up East Palo Alto. Have you been involved with grants to try to do some good in East Palo Alto?
Well, yes, very much so. And it goes back to Dave Packard was doing something even before the foundation was there and trying to help. And he and some other people put in and started a job training place that was called OICW for many years, and now it's changed its name. But anyway, it trains maybe several thousand people a year to get jobs. What we did is we found that East Palo Alto was a very poor community and was not doing too well. So it didn't have much. It had a city manager and a secretary, and that was about the staff. So we hired for them, gave them the money to hire a city planner. This was a very experienced person. He came in, he decided that there was an old high school that was no longer being used, and it was just sitting there. He took that out, and they now, IKEA, a big furniture store, and Best Buy, and a number of other stores are there, and another place called Whiskey Gulch, which was just that, now has a Four Seasons hotel and big office buildings. This increased the budget of the city by about 25%, and they were able to, about 450 people from the city now have jobs in those places.
So the city planner is somebody your organization has?
Well, we brought him, we paid for him, and we helped them find him. They had to go along and make sure he was somebody compatible to what they were doing. They hired him for 18 months. He came up with these plans, and then he left. But the city went through with the plans, and they're much better off.
So this is an example. Instead of taking that money and, let's say, going and training 50 or 100 persons, and then they have to go out and get a job. Instead, you put the money where it matters most, with somebody who has great expertise and can find the resources and turn it into something really significant, like a better tax base.
Well, I think you brought up a very good point. If you're going to put your money somewhere that's going to make a difference, the person leading that program is very important. And whether it's somebody that you help them bring in or whether it's somebody there, but you really want to look at the leadership of the organizations you support.
And what's the main characteristic you like to see in leadership?
Well, I don't think there's a particular main characteristic. You want somebody that can delegate and somebody who's a real leader, who speaks well and can convince other people that what they're doing is right. You want somebody that understands the finances. You want somebody who has the feeling in their mind and soul that they want to move forward and really want to make some changes. You can just, I don't know what it's all in a great leader, but you can just oftentimes just see it, and you know right away that's the group we'd like to fund.
Okay, that's very good. I listened carefully. So you gave us an example of what you did in East Palo Alto, and that's probably an example that every more affluent city, small or large in the nation, could do. There's always somebody right next to them. I think it's usually on the east that they could do something like that to help that community, which in turn helps themselves. Can you give us another example of an investment your foundation has made that has done some good?
Well, we've been invested in an organization called First 5, and that's for the first 5 years. We really feel it's that children need to get some education before they get to kindergarten, particularly if they don't speak English. If you come to kindergarten and you speak a different language and not English, it takes you about a year to learn. Everybody else moves up a year, and if you're average, you just never catch up. So getting kids involved and at 3, 4 years old has made a difference. So we've invested in First 5, we've invested in some other groups, and we've really been able to greatly increase the number of children of all levels into in their schooling and make it their education is far better.
Is this on a scope of the Palo Alto community, or?
This is throughout California, but we are also working in some 23 other states.
Okay, 23 other states and California. Now we're dealing with 2- and 3-year-olds, and they're not even registered in school. How do you, daycare centers?
Well, preschools are, oftentimes they can be right in the school, and the kids just come at 3 or 4 years old. Other times they could be in child care. I mean, child care can be, sitting the kids down in front of a TV set and hope they don't make a fuss, or it can be really an educational experience. And so what we're trying to do is to help child care centers to be much more educational. It's amazing how much kids can learn. One of the big mistakes we make in the United States is waiting until children get to be 15 or 16 to teach them a foreign language. We should be teaching them when they're very young. My 3 granddaughters live in Beijing. They all speak Chinese. Well, they don't speak it because my daughter speaks it, but they speak it because they've learned it from people who are there in China, and they've learned it quickly when they're young.
All right, since you made the point that it's difficult for a child to start kindergarten if the child does not speak English here. Mm-hmm. Have you targeted areas of this state or other states where there are minorities that just because of their arrival here do not speak English? Special effort?
Yes, there are certain school districts really working, and Los Angeles is probably one of the biggest, or is the biggest, certainly in California. And they've been really looking at this. We've worked throughout Santa Clara County and different areas. But it's something that kids can gain at any level. And so you're trying to bring all of the children in to do that. And the number of children involved has, as I say, increased dramatically in California. And their education is going to be a lot better.
Okay. Now, I hope this has some positive effect on education, because I believe California is ranked, what are we, 40th or something?
Yeah, we're down pretty low.
Yes. But I do greatly value education at the earliest age, and I can see it makes a tremendous difference. Now, you've given us 2 examples of where the Packard Foundation has invested money, not because you invested money, but because these are examples of how the money and the people that are involved in working can do something effective. Do you have another example that you'd like to share with us?
Well, let me give you an example on an international basis. Now, a lot of people can't do this because they don't have the resources and so on, but it is something that we've been able to do, and that's working with China. China has recently passed the United States up as far as throwing carbon dioxide and smoke and soot and stuff up into the air, and it's been growing very quickly. We set up a program there where we started with about $5 million a year, and we've convinced others, and now there's about $35 million. We have a staff of about 28 there, and they're working with the government in a number of areas. They're trying to help with cars, buses, and trucks, rapid transit, building codes, making the buildings much more energy efficient, trying to stop people who are, whether they're making cement or steel or creating electricity from throwing so much stuff, help them to have a much more effective, factory, and then, or trying to, just look at alternatives like solar and wind, and those are